Hey there, beautiful souls, and welcome back to Uncovering Your Inner Power. Today's conversation is one that beautifully bridges science, psychology, and the unseen energies that shape our lives. I'm honored to be joined by Dr. Eleanor Haspel-Portner. Dr. Eleanor is a psychologist, researcher, and pioneer in the field of energy wellness. With decades of experience integrating neuroscience, quantum principles, emotional intelligence, and human potential research, she's dedicated her life to understanding how energy influences our biology, our mindset, and our ability to thrive. Her work at Noble Energy Wellness explores how we can consciously work with subtle energy to improve physical health, emotional resilience, cognitive clarity, and spiritual growth. This is not just a conversation about healing, it's a conversation about what it truly means to activate the full spectrum of human potential. Dr. Eleanor, welcome. I'm so grateful you're here today.
I'm delighted to be here with you and with your audience.
Thank you. I've been geeking out on neuroscience and quantum physics for many, many years now.
Mm.
So I'm excited for this conversation. Many people hear the word energy and think it's abstract or unscientific.
Uh,
How do you explain energy in a way that bridges neuroscience and measurable biology?
we live on Earth, and the Earth is a planetary body that is impacted by the atmosphere. The atmosphere is energy. We breathe in oxygen. It has all kinds of nurturing. We can't live without the atmosphere, without the oxygen, without the components in our air. If you don't take a breath, if you hold your breath, we feel like nothing's moving. And as soon as we breathe again, we feel something going in and something going out. That's energy.
Right.
And that surrounds us. And our energetic body is actually extending 7 feet around us. So I was very blessed when I was born to see energy. And I didn't know what I was seeing. I didn't know what I was responding to. My parents didn't know what I was communicating. And so over time, I came back into the awareness that during my childhood, I was watching the energy of people. And I could tell if people weren't telling me something that was really true to their heart and soul.
Do you see colors?
I do.
I don't see colors. I feel people's energy and I know it extends out from people's bodies. So I feel it, but I don't see it. I know quite a few people who see colors.
I see movement within somebody's energy field. And if I look, I can see the colors. If I look, I can see content. It took me a long time to not see, because seeing the energy of people you don't know could be intrusive to them and to me.
Now, did you ever suppress these gifts at some point in your life? Because I know a lot of times people are told that it's nonsense, it's not real, and it makes people feel uh, like there's something wrong with them. So I've heard of people that have these gifts who have suppressed it throughout their lives. Have you ever had that experience or were you encouraged?
I was not encouraged, but I wasn't discouraged. I come from a family that was psychic. My oldest sister was way more psychic than I ever was. She was telepathic and she was precognitive. I'm not precognitive. Growing up, I I wasn't encouraged, but when I would do things, I caught a lot of criticism from a lot of people because I marched pretty much to my own drum, so to speak. I did, and my mother would say, leave her alone, let her do her thing. So I had support in that way. And I remember not wanting to be around some people. First grade, I had a teacher I loved. And when it got time to move into second grade, I was supposed to be switched to a different class that was a smarter class. And I didn't want to go. I wanted that teacher. I really liked her. And my mother went in and fought for me and said she wants to stay in this class, even though it's not the best class for her. And I want her to be able to do that. So I didn't, if we listen to our children and what they say and what they feel, then we honor the spirit, the soul, the energy. And too many people don't know how to listen.
I think children are so much more in tune than we give them credit for.
100%. All
So here,
children see energy.
oh yeah, definitely.
So, Jill, do you remember seeing energy from the time you were born?
No. And I will tell you that I have, from the time I was born, I had a lot of trauma. So I have very few childhood memories. I have a lot of, I have some traumatic memories, but the stuff in between is very spotty.
So, what gave you your resilience that brought you back into awareness?
I honestly don't know. I feel like I've had a gift all my life that even though things were hard, I always moved forward. I would recognize that something had to be done and I would do it, which I also believe gave me that need to control. So I've had throughout my life the tendency to want to control everything around me and be on top of everybody and everything. And I know that that is one of the outcomes from a trauma childhood, is that you have a need to control. So I don't remember, but I know that I've always kind of felt like I know who I like and I know who I don't like. So when somebody walks in the room, I feel their energy. And if it doesn't feel right, I walk the other way.
So, is it a want for control or is it a self protective and self empowered way of being?
Yeah, more of a self-protective, self-empowered way of being. I've never really wanted to control other people, but circumstances. So
But you don't
when,
want people to control you.
oh no, not at all.
Nothing.
Not at all.
Well, who of us would want to be controlled?
Right. No, I do beat to my own drum, just like
Uh,
you. And I've often felt, um, I won't say unwelcome, but not like I fit in a lot of places because I'm different and I'm okay with that. I honor my difference. I have a loud voice and it travels sometimes, and sometimes I scare myself with the sound of my voice or my laughter, but I'm like, oh well, there I am again, it's who I am, and I embrace it more so now than I did in the past. It comes with learning
mhm.
to accept yourself and that we're growing every day.
Well, part of accepting ourselves is ignoring the perceptions of other people that are imposed upon us.
Right.
And that is so difficult for so many people. And so many listeners have been told things about themselves and they take it in. It could be something a teacher said in passing, or it could be a parent who was judgmental or a sibling. And it's really important, I think, to go within yourself always and measure for yourself. Is this aligning with me? Is this right for me? My famous line to my clients is, when you know what you know, and no one can tell you you don't know, you're not stubborn, you're not selfish, you are aligned. Do
There you
not
go.
compromise.
I like that.
I say that to all my clients. And also, when you know with the K, when I first started really waking up as an adult and claiming my power, it was dreams about knowing with a K.
A capital K.
A capital K.
Yeah. So like they capitalize the word divine for the divine, K with a knowing, because it comes
Right.
from the
It's the
divine
same
within
thing.
you. Right.
Yes.
Yep, definitely. And now I've been reading your book, Living from the Soul, and you talk about the 4 dimensions. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the 4 dimensions.
Of course. So when um, we're born from a developmental sequence of what's turning on and off within us as a human being. And so at birth, we're still developing. We're not fully who we are at the moment of birth. So astrology that talks about the birth moment being who you are is faulty. And the tree of life, ancient knowledge of Kabbalistic tree of life, is a model that talks about 4 worlds. And it's a sequence where we start in the sacral center, the gut, and energy moves up increasingly as we get older, and we become a whole person. At 3 months of age, anyone in the audience who's had children knows that when a baby is 3 months old, if they're not reaching for an object, you worry about them. If they're not smiling at someone, you worry about them. Because at 3 months of age, the baby's gastrointestinal tract is developed and their spirit is anchored in the body, and they're ready to manifest their full potential in the world. My research found that there are 4 worlds, and it factors in the body map I use. So we have the mental waking world. We're talking in the mental world right now. We're using the language of our culture. We're dressed appropriately for where we live. That's the mental waking world, the world of daily life. It is not who we are. It's who we are to get by in a body. And our body is our physical, biological body. Now, what's really interesting is that the mental waking world and the physical, biological world are the only 2 worlds that have emotions. In the spirit, which happens when we sleep and dream, and we are exposed during REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep, when we dream, we get symbols. We're connected to everything that has consciousness. And there's carryover from that deep dream world to our waking world. But more than that, our intuition, which is splenic, is part of the emotional, I call it the emotional angelic world.
What excuse me, what is splenic?
The spleen, which is the center of intuition.
Oh, okay.
Okay. In the tree of life, there's it's a diagram with what's called paths of intelligence. And it correlates. I'm trained as a clinical psychologist and a social scientist at University of Chicago. And so my education was very integrative. And what we see in the tree of life is that those dimensions of consciousness have different frequencies. And as we get older, there are certain developmental tasks that we must complete in order to go to the next stage. In psychology, that's called a Gutman scale. We know it from childhood, most people in the West, because we couldn't learn to ride a bicycle, for example, until we had certain developed skills. Or if you rode a tricycle, you couldn't ride a two-wheeler until you had certain coordination. Psychological things like brings mathematical numbers develop at certain ages. Abstract reasoning develops at the teenage years. So we know psychologically that there's developmental sequences. And when those sequences happen developmentally, new components of the different worlds come into us.
So, like,
We,
we're opened up to the next level. So
yes,
once we hit a certain age,
we become capable of that. So in the early years, we're primarily learning who we are, what it feels like when you say I, the terrible twos that parents struggle with. Why is it terrible twos? It's terrible twos because suddenly this 2-year-old is saying I. Only many 2-year-olds say me instead of I. So that flip between being an object to being an initiator happens around 2 years of age.
so what's the difference when they say between me and when they say I, like developmentally? Is there a difference in how they're perceiving themselves?
Yes, yes.
And what
And
is that difference?
because me is something that somebody says, you're not coming from yourself. You're coming from what somebody has put on you, so to speak. You say to another person, it's not you, it's me. You want them to perceive you.
Right.
And so many parents do not perceive the I of the child.
And do you feel that this stage where they're supposed to be developing, they're getting their wings, so to speak, they're coming into their own, and the people around them are squashing uh,
Exactly.
their growth essentially
Well,
because
they're telling them how to be.
right,
This is how you have to be accepted in the mental waking world.
right.
And if you don't like it, don't speak up because we
Big
don't want to
big
hear it.
voice, don't cry, children should be seen, not heard,
Right.
those kind of things.
So
And
that's,
that's how we develop our insecurities.
yes, because we're not in current time. I don't know of any culture in the world that really honors the soul of the child. And it's tragic because so many people are lost, and it would be so easy for them to be back in themselves. Um, a lot of the work I do is just transformational work with people. encouraging them to own their spirit, to own their intuition when you know what you know. Don't let somebody say you don't know it.
Right.
And then it takes courage to stand up for it, as you know from your childhood.
For sure.
A lot of the pain that people feel comes from that mismatch between who they are and who they're being perceived as.
Right. Right. Well, I write about it in my book that I feel like we have like nesting dolls within us, right? So we come from a very small and we grow and grow. So, and they often talk about going back and healing the inner child. But I feel like those nesting dolls that we have many levels of our inner selves that need care and repair.
Yes. And being perceived. We want to be perceived. We want to be seen. We want to be heard. And it doesn't take much.
No.
It just takes somebody looking us in the eye and saying, I get it. I get who you are.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very meaningful when you feel like somebody sees you. And not that they have to agree with you,
No,
because being seen is important, but you don't have to have that person who sees you necessarily buy into what you are
no.
outputting.
One of the big issues that is occurring now in society, especially now with the planetary alignment coming up on February 28th and the blood moon lunar eclipse on March 3rd, and manifestation from my charts, from my noble energy work, I know that manifestation takes 3 months. So what's happening now won't be completed until June. And there's a lot of emotional reactivity in the world. Huge. More than ever before in my lifetime. And emotional reactivity, according to the tree of life, is where people get stuck. They level out. And so much, because you hit it, Jill, on the head when you said, we don't have to agree. So instead of being emotionally reactive, tolerance and love. And then everybody can feel what they feel. Everybody can do what they feel within their own space. But don't impose emotions on other people.
Yes. I've taken a hiatus from the news because it was everywhere, everything, every day, the news, the news, the news, the news. And I found myself feeling very much my anxiety level increasing. And I said, this is not serving me. And I've totally stopped looking at anything that even remotely has. Like I would watch some talk shows once in a while, and I came to realize that they were just shoving their ideals, their opinions, their views down my throat. And I was like, I don't necessarily agree with that. And it's not serving me. So I'm taking a media sabbatical.
Mhm. And there's no tolerance for discussion anymore,
Right.
for an exchange of ideas. And
Right.
that's sad.
Yeah. I actually had something that kind of slipped into my awareness, and it kind of bothered me. So rather than going to the news feeds and the news cycles to see what was going on, I took the information that I had and I put it into Chat GPT, and I said, this is what I'm hearing. What is the high level impact of what I've heard? Give it to me without an opinion. and it put my mind at ease that I could know that it was a true thing, but the way it was being hyped was really clouding the full picture. So I think in this time, one of the most beneficial things that we can do is go inward and
Exactly.
listen to our inner being. What really is true for me, and not to listen to all the noise around us.
Also, what I like to encourage people to do is to break it into four worlds and the integrated. So when you do your inner work, identify which level. So is it the mental waking world? And that level at which you would perceive or react is going to be different than the spiritual level, is going to be different than the emotional angelic, where you're taking a challenge and you're transforming it into compassion and love. So I do all of my worksheets for clients with the four worlds. And, news is mental waking world. It has nothing to
Right,
do with us.
right,
And how we react to it is the key.
right,
And is it truth or is it opinion?
right,
And
right.
that's a big key.
So I had a question for you surrounding the four dimensions, because I was a little not understanding the difference between the spiritual archetypical world and the emotional angelic world. Can you tell me the difference between the two?
Absolutely. The dream world, the sleep world, is unconscious. It is when we are in REM sleep. When we're in, REM is rapid eye movement. It's not deep sleep, which
Right.
is the physical biologic world. But the REM sleep is the level of sleep that Carl Jung and Freud talked about for dreams. You get symbols, you get images, you have no idea where they came from.
Mm.
And a lot of time, you get symbols that we call archetypal. They're common in all society.
Oh, gotcha.
Spirals, or um, animals, or so when we sleep and dream, from a theoretical standpoint, we believe that all consciousness becomes one because we're getting these symbols. So it's, I had an experience, my first huge Kundalini experience as an adult. And I was asking a key question of what am I afraid? And suddenly a light appeared, and it was God. And the answer came, you're afraid of death. And I said, why? What? Because at the moment between life and death, we have all knowledge and we remember what we forget. And then when we reincarnate, we come in like a tabula rasa. We don't remember what we forgot. And our lifetime is remembering who we are and why we're here. And the Tree of Life says the first task, the Tree of Life says the Holy Spirit lives in the gut, in the sacral center, where Kundalini energy, the caduceus of the medical field, is a snake coming up the spine. That's the Kundalini energy. And in the Tree of Life, it's the Holy Spirit that rises up in us as we come into consciousness. But when we first are born, we don't remember that it's not our first rodeo. And we have to remember that we're not ignorant, that we're not unknowing, that our intelligence is transcendent. What
Well, all the
makes us
knowledge lives within us.
exactly. So if we believe that, then we connect with all consciousness, and that's spirit. That's the spiritual world when we dream. But when we come into a waking consciousness, what world are we in? Well, we don't immediately move into the waking world. We move into ourselves, our intuition, our knowing, our creative intelligence, the intelligence that isn't just the reality. We move through our day, but we're a conscious being. We're having a conversation, but while we're having this conversation, there's a lot of unconscious processing going on in each of us. And that is the emotional angelic world that wants to make sense of what our conversation is, not just according to the mental waking world and what we do in it, but we're being driven by another intelligence within us to understand way more than the unconscious tells us. And that's what
No.
I call the emotional angelic.
Okay. Now, is there a connection between our nervous system regulation and the frequency or energy that we emit?
Absolutely. And that's where emotional reactivity can be triggered, because emotional reactivity is triggered in the physical body by the mental waking world for the most part. Now, there's the autonomic nervous system that's unconscious completely, but not, because the galvanic skin response, the lie detector test, what is it measuring? It's measuring the responses on our skin that are showing what's going on inside this black box physiologically.
How does that work? I've always wondered about lie detector tests. How does it work?
Well, you asked the question about neurological energy. I break it into two sides. We have the side of ourselves that is body, instinct, mind, intuitive. You know where to be. You know, if you walk into a room and it doesn't feel right, you want to get out of there.
Mm-hmm.
That's intuition.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the instinct response. On the other side is body, feeling, mind. And that's where the environment impacts us, and we can get emotionally reactive to things that are demanded of us that may not be right for us.
So does that emit a charge through your skin? Is that how they
It
tell
does.
whether you're
It
lying?
does.
Okay.
Yes. The unconscious nuances in the body skin response tell scientists a great deal.
That's very interesting. The body is so cool.
It's
I've been very geeked out about the whole thing, the mind, body, spirit, everything. And I know it's all connected. It's at this stage of my life understanding that, and it's so fascinating how it all works.
It is so fascinating. I mean, you know, working with it clinically, as I did for so many years, um, is for me, it's like putting pieces of a puzzle together for someone and um, decoding information that might free them from something. But when I got my noble energy maps, and I can actually see the influences and energetic impact on a baby that makes them predisposed to certain responses, it opened a whole other realm of understanding who we are and how we're designed.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about the noble energy maps?
Sure. For the listeners who've heard about human design, I was asked by the developer of human design to validate the maps scientifically. A human design chart is a map that shows all of the energy centers of the body and how the cosmic forces at birth and before birth influence you, as well as the spiritual body. But the human design was an incomplete system because it didn't include spirit in a deep way. It didn't show the physical, biological body and the impact on it, or the impact on the energies the first 3 months of life. So when I expanded the system to be scientifically accurate, based on my research on 45,000 cases, 30,000 statistically, and 15,000 clinically, what I found is that astrologically, we could get a map of the four worlds that the Tree of Life describes. And it held scientifically, developmentally, astrologically, physiologically. So I get a map with centers, energy centers, and different worlds, and I can read how somebody has been impacted on an unconscious level starting from birth, and then how they make their decisions, how they process information, how intuitively they process things, where they're vulnerable and where they're strong. And 99% of the population are designed to manifest their full potential. So anyone who does a reading and tells you you're a certain type, or uses a formula or a boilerplate, they are not doing a good job for you. I had an interesting experience this morning. I was doing a meeting with a student of mine who's writing a book about me, and she was asking me to look at some charts. And I looked at my own chart and I said to her, I never saw this in my chart before. You know, I'm looking at it and this explains this about me and this explains this about me. And this planet being in this placement is very different than if it was in a different placement in terms of the energy that impacted me as a baby. So for those listeners who have children, listen to your child. Find out who your child is. Do not assume. Do not project. Watch and listen. I'll tell a little story. My grandson was a preemie, and I didn't know what to expect in a preemie. And I was already a clinician and an expert in child development. And I didn't know, when you're dealing with a preemie, at what age do you expect them to smile or reach for something? And so I was starting to worry, and he was just laying on the floor of my office. I was watching him, and I'm standing there looking at him and saying, oh, is he okay? Is he okay? And he's looking around the room like this. And all of a sudden, my intuition said, oh, you're looking at the energy. You see energy. He looked directly at me and smiled. And I went, oh, he was communicating that I didn't get it.
Right.
And it, so if you have children, pay attention to the nonverbal communication.
Yes.
That is so critical, so critical. And it's not what they do, it's who they are. That's who you are in care of, is who your child is, not what you want them to become.
Yes. I feel that in the core of my being because I grew up in an era where we were taught how to raise our children, and I really wish I had done it differently.
You
I
know,
see my daughter the way my daughter is raising my grandson. I watch her and I'm so impressed by her because she allows him to explore and do things in ways that I didn't when my children were little. I tried to control what they did and organize their lives because that's
and
the
you
way that
thought
I
you were
thought a
being a
kid should.
good parent.
Right. And now I see her and I just get amazed every time I watch her with him and how patient she is and how she lets him
And that must
just
make
do
you
his
feel
own thing.
so,
Oh
so,
yeah.
I
Yeah,
I
I'm
mean,
so proud of her. Yeah.
and that she could move beyond limitation and
Yeah.
open her heart to do it differently.
Yes. Yep, absolutely. If
I
someone's
asked my
feeling
mother at one point, because I'm the youngest of five,
Mhm.
and I said to her at one point, so Ma, what were you thinking when you had your children? She looked at me. She said, you know, before Spock in 1952, we just survived. We didn't think in those days, when I was growing up, she said, or, during the Second World War, there was no psychological sophistication.
Right.
It was all survival. And she said it really wasn't until the 50s that psychology even began to come into the mainstream. And we began to think about resentments or anger or consequences of what we were doing.
Right.
And that's so telling.
Yeah. I think we've evolved some. And I think we've a long way to go. So I think that every generation is trying to improve on the generation before them. So my daughter's doing better than I did. And, I'm sure that my
And she has
grandson,
you. She has you. And you've done so much work on yourself and
thank
come
you.
through so much and probably shared a lot with her about it. And so she benefited from your honesty and your transparency.
Well, I hope that's the case.
Well, you're telling me it is the case, or she wouldn't be transparent with her son.
Yeah, she's doing a good job. I'm very proud of her. So
Be proud of yourself also, Jill.
thank you. I appreciate that. If someone's listening and they feel depleted, overwhelmed, or disconnected from their inner power, where would you suggest they begin?
Begin with taking time, set aside time for yourself every day, ideally in the morning before you start your day, or at the end of your day when you're unwinding and you can just be internal, and get a journal. And I think a easy practice would be gratitudes, simple gratitude, but always add the because statement. I'm grateful for X because, and I like to use a tangible, concrete effect on me of that gratitude. What did that experience give me that was empowering for me? And how do I put that into a language that isn't just being grateful, but is reflecting on its real impact internally for me? And when you use a because statement, the research shows that cortisol decreases and that a sense of feeling of peace and joy becomes activated. So when I write gratitudes, I always do it in each of the worlds. Because, for example, in the mental waking world, I might be grateful for the food I have to eat because it nourishes my body. But I also might be grateful for the truffle I ate at lunchtime because it tasted so good and it gave me so much pleasure. Or I might be grateful for being able to do a podcast and share my own spirit with the listeners because it gives me a sense of life purpose and of completing a mission. So you can see that adding a because statement gives it a dimensionality.
Yes.
And if you do it in each world, for example, what would I be grateful for in the physical world? That even though I didn't get a great night's sleep last night, I feel rested and I can go about my day energetically. So, for listeners, whatever you feel, ask a key question. Okay, God, what is so important for me to learn that you would put this challenge in front of me?
I like that question.
I love that question.
What a powerful and expansive conversation. I hope today stretched your perspective and maybe even invited you to see yourself through a new lens. If there's one thing I'm walking away with, is this: we are not limited to our conditioning, our past, or even our biology. We are dynamic, intelligent, energetic beings. And when we learn how to work with that energy consciously, everything shifts. Dr. Eleanor, thank you for sharing your depth of wisdom and experience with us today. This was illuminating and empowering. And if you'd like to learn more about Dr. Eleanor's work, explore her research, or connect with Noble Energy Wellness, I'll be sharing all of her links and resources in the show notes. And if this episode resonated with you, please share it with someone who's ready to expand their understanding of what's truly possible. Your shares and reviews genuinely help this show grow and reach more people who are on their own journey of awakening and empowerment. Until next time, keep uncovering your inner power. Thank you so much for sharing your time with me today. I truly honor you for being here and for choosing to do this deeper work. If this episode resonated with you, I'd love to stay connected. You can sign up for my newsletter at empoweredbythestorm.com/newsletter. And when you do, you'll receive a free copy of my How to Love Yourself workbook as a thank you. My book, Empowered by the Storm, is also available on Amazon if you'd like to go deeper into this work on your own time. And if you're feeling called to more personal support, you can visit my website to explore private coaching and see if it feels like the right next step for you. Until next time, be gentle with yourself, trust your journey, and remember, your healing matters.